Kirtanya tirtha jasasam Punya sloka yasaskaram Dhyayed Devam samagram gam Yavanna chavate manaha Kirtanya tirthayasasam Punya sloka yasaskaram Dayaye devam samagrangam Yavanna chavate manaha. Translation. The glory of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. So you can repeat, the glory of the Lord, is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One has to fix his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. When one is accustomed to thinking, of one of the innumerable forms of the Lord, Krishna, Vishnu, Ram, Narayan, etc., he has reached the platform of yoga. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. A person who has developed pure love for the Lord and whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of transcendental loving exchange always sees within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotees especially see the Lord in the beautiful blackish form of Shama Sundar and Radha Madhav here, and your beautiful deities here. Let's see, where was I? That is the perfection of yoga. This yoga system should be continued until the mind does not vacillate for a moment. Om Tad Vishnu Param Param Sada Pashyanti Suryaha. The form of Vishnu is the highest individuality and is always visible to sages and saintly persons. The same purpose is served when a devotee worships the form of the Lord in the temple. There is no difference between devotional service in the temple and meditation on the form of the Lord, since the form of the Lord is the same whether he appears within the mind or in some concrete element. There are 8 kinds of forms recommended for devotees to see. The forms may be out of sand, clay, wood, stone. They may be contemplated within the mind or made of jewels, metal, or painted colors. But all the forms are of the same value. It is not that one who meditates on the form within the mind sees differently from one who worships the form in the temple. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is absolute, and there is therefore no difference between the two. The impersonalists who desire to disregard the eternal form of the Lord imagine some round figure. They especially prefer the Omkara, which also has form. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that Omkar is the letter form of the Lord. Similarly, there are statue forms and painting forms of the Lord. Another significant word in this verse is Punya Shloka Yashaskaram. The devotee is called Punya Shloka. As one becomes purified by chanting the holy name of the Lord, so one can become purified simply by chanting the name of a holy devotee. Jaya Prabhupada. The pure devotee of the Lord and the Lord himself are non-different. It is sometimes feasible to chant the name of a holy devotee. This is a very sanctified process. Lord Chaitanya was once chanting the holy names of the gopis when his students criticized him. Why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why not Krishna? Lord Chaitanya was irritated by the criticism. And so there was some misunderstanding between him and his students. He wanted to chastise them for desiring to instruct him on the transcendental process of chanting. The beauty of the Lord is that the devotees who are connected with his activities are also glorified. Arjun, Prahlad, Janaka Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, and many other devotees were not even in the renounced order of life, but were householders. Some of them, such as Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, were born of demoniac families. Prahlad Maharaj's father was a demon, and Bali Maharaj was the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. But still they have many still they have become famous because of their association with the Lord. Anyone who is eternally associated with the Lord is glorified with the Lord. The conclusion is that a perfect yogi should always be accustomed to seeing the form of the Lord, and unless the mind is fixed in that way, one should continue practicing yoga. So there is a lot in this report. Meditating on the blackish form of the Lord, and here you have the most beautiful deities here. Radha Madhav, Sri Sri Radha Madhav. And in Los Angeles, Prabhupada was giving class, and he said, when you come to the greeting of the deities in the morning, you should take a photograph in your mind, mentally take a photograph of the deities so that you can see them all day long. You simply bring it up in your mind and you can see the form. So, and that, sometimes we see something, we get that image caught in our mind, and, so when Prabhupada said that, I thought, wow, instead of having some mundane image caught in your mind, yes, meditate on beautiful form of Krishna in the morning, of the deity form, and that you bring it up all day long. This way we train the mind to always think of Krishna, always remembering him, and here, as this is described, this yoga is to fix the mind on the Supreme Person of Godhead constantly, and to see him actually within the mind, to actually see him. This oftentimes I think, here Krishna, he, man baba bhakta man. Oh my God. Anyway, so always think of me, become my devotee. This is who would say this? What mundane person would tell everyone, always think of me and become my devotee, surrender to me, think of me always. What mundane person, what a puffed up rascal who would talk like that. But Krishna says this. Well, what's his position? Why can he say that? Because aham sarvasya prabhavo mataha savam pavartate. Krishna says, I am the source of everything, material and spiritual. Everything emanates from me. And the wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotion service. So this, and I've said this before, I look at these photographs from the telescopes that are reaching way out into the universe, Before, all we could see when we were a child, you look up in the sky and see all these stars, you kind of see the grayness of the Milky Way, and you kind of imagine what things look like. But now they have these telescopes reaching way out into space, and you see all these galaxies, so many, as it's described, there is innumerable universes, and each one has so many planets, so many solar systems. So this is anybody who claims that they are the supreme Godhead. There are so many, sometimes there are some bogey yogis who claim that I am God, what rascals? Are they the actual ones who have created this whole universe? All of the planets? And but yes, Krishna says, but he is also giving the proof. He is at 8 years old, holding up Govardhan Hill for 7 days and nights with these little fingers. He did so many pastimes that no one else can do. He fought with the demigods, fought with Lord Indra just to get a flower for his wife who wanted a parijata flower. So this is, he went to fight with the demigods. He's not an ordinary mundane soul, not a yogi, not a mystic. And it's defined how, he just appears in his eternal form from time to time, or he comes in some avatar form for our benefit. But he is the creator, the sustainer of the whole universe. He is our source. So why should we not highly respect our own source, our own source of our own existence? It is in that way we are also respecting ourselves, and we're respecting everyone and everything in the universe by respecting Krishna. The example is given: to water the plant, you don't put the water on the leaf, runs off, but it doesn't get nutrients to the whole plant, but you water the root, the source, the root sucks in and provides nourishment everywhere. So Krishna is the root of creation. So in this way, Krishna can make these bold claims, to surrender to him, worship him, always think of him. And this yoga is being described here by Kapila, that the glory of the Lord is always worth singing. It's worth singing for our own benefit. And it's not just to, that Krishna needs the glorification, but it's for our benefit. And in this way, we are also, like I said, because he's our own source, we're actually glorifying the whole, everything, the universe and ourselves. His glories enhance the glories of his devotees. So glorifying Krishna also enhances the glories of his devotees. So how? Because of what I just said. He is our source. So, chanting the names and chanting the names of the devotees. Well, oftentimes we glorify Nrsimha. Well, I'll glorify Lakshmi Nrsimha or Prahlad Nrsimha. We glorify his devotee along with the Lord. ISKCON, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, when Prabhupada came to the West, became known as the Hare Krishna movement. So many other gurus started their own mission, and it was the Chinmayi, they would use their own names for their mission. But for Srila Prabhupada, he always put Krishna first, Krishna in the center. This was the Hare Krishna movement. This was Lord Chaitanya's mission. But for the devotees, we glorify Srila Prabhupada because he is the one who gave us this Krishna consciousness. He's the one who is propagating Lord Chaitanya's mission all over the world. So for us, we glorify Srila Prabhupada. But he will always put Krishna first, Krishna in the center. But when we think of ISKCON or Hare Krishna movement, we think of Srila Prabhupada. Just like, because when we think of Nrsimha, we think of Prahlad. When we think of Krishna giving the Bhagavad Gita, speaking the Bhagavad Gita, we think of Arjuna. So, Lord Chaitanya was chanting it says here the names of the gopis, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita just says he was chanting Gopi, Gopi, Gopi. And his students were like, why are you chanting? What value is there chanting the names of the gopis? They're chanting Gopi, Gopi. You should be chanting Krishna's names. He was their teacher. He's the one who taught them the glories of chanting Krishna's name. But now they want to chastise him and instruct him. It's described that Lord Chaitanya became very angry. He was very irritated that his students would chastise him. And he actually took up a stick and he started chasing, actually it was one student, and he started chasing him to beat him. And the devotees had to stop Lord Chaitanya, and then they went back. But that devotee, he went on, that Brahmin student, he went on and found there was an assembly of 1,000 students who had assembled. And so he went and told them what Lord Chaitanya had done, that he was doing nonsense, chanting Gopi, Gopi, like some nonsense. He was going to get benefit from chanting mundane, thing. And then he tried to attack me, a caste Brahmin. Who is he? Who does he think he is? So he riled up 1,000 people, and they went make complaints against Lord Chaitanya. And they wanted to attack him, but they just chastised him. You do this again, and we will attack you. Who do you think you are to try to attack us? We are the caste Brahmins. So from this pastime or this incident, Lord Chaitanya contemplated how to save these souls. I mean, they were making offenses. They had now become offensive. And because, as Prabhupada is explaining here, to glorify the devotees of Krishna is non-different than glorifying Krishna. To glorify the gopis, and because they are the pure devotees of Krishna, it is non-different from glorifying Krishna. And his students were new students. They didn't understand. They were puffed up. So Lord Chaitanya was realizing they have lost all of their so-called intelligence. And they've made offenses. So how to save them? So this is why Lord Chaitanya, this is when and why Lord Chaitanya decided to take sannyas. Because he saw that the people in general respect the position of a sannyas, renounced order. At that time, Lord Chaitanya was still grihastha. But this is the incident why he decided to take up the sannyas ashram. That saddened the devotees that Lord Chaitanya had done this, but he did it for this mission. He said he has come here to help save these conditioned souls in this age of Kali. And if they were making fun of him, they were making jokes in the days following. They were just joking and laughing about this nonsense, sentimental person who they claimed were going to destroy their whole country. So he had to do something. So that is when he took sannyas. So, and Prabhupada makes a point that actually any form of Krishna, the form of the 8 kinds of forms recommended to see, made out of sand, clay, wood, stone, contemplated within the mind, or made of jewels, metal, or painted colors, paintings. So they're non-different because they're all forms of Krishna. We don't want to overly criticize, but we do need to point out that like in the Judaism and Islam, they do not allow worship of the form of God. They do not allow even the chanting of his names. They consider that one is too offensive in this world. One is too offensive, that it creates an offense. The Jews say to say the name of God would create an offense. But we teach that God's name is all purifying. That by chanting and hearing God's name, Krishna's name, especially from the lips of a pure devotee, has an all purifying effect. It purifies the soul, it purifies the consciousness, it uplifts the soul, purifies. So the holy name, Krishna, is all powerful in all his different forms are non-different, different aspects of these forms. His name is just as powerful. And it is so that we have a different philosophy. And see the form of the Lord. This is completely not allowed in Judaism or Islam. And many Christians also follow that idea. The Catholic Church did have like a statue Murti of Jesus and Mother Mary and things like that. But outside of that, a lot of Christian faiths take up the Judaic idea that you shouldn't see the form. It's not, that we're too offensive, we'll make offensive. But we see that as a lower understanding, an incomplete understanding. Although there were at times that people were too offensive, they were too degraded, and therefore, in different ways, teachers had to come and say, "You should not. You are too offensive. You shouldn't go into a temple. You shouldn't go in to see Krishna because you'll a form of the deity, or because you'll make offense." But there were times like that. But in this, currently, Lord Chaitanya has given the mercy. He's taken Krishna into the streets to chant Harinam Sankirtan into the streets so everyone can hear and become purified. Prabhupada had said there was a report in the newspaper that was not favorable. I can't remember exact details of which report, but it was an article in the newspaper and it was not favorable. So a devotee was telling Srila Prabhupada, and I can't remember if Prabhupada asked them to read or if he just said how many times, I think he asked, are they using the name Krishna? And they mentioned Krishna so many times, and Prabhupada said, "Oh, very nice, very good." Even though they were saying mostly about the movement and about, what the devotees were doing, but it was, but Prabhupada was, "Oh, that is very good. They're saying the name of Krishna." Even unknowingly like that. So meditating on Krishna, so that we can think of him always. It says, what was the last part of the verse? It said one should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. This doesn't mean that once the mind becomes fixed, we stop meditating on the Lord. What it means is you train the mind to meditate on the Lord until the mind becomes fixed in that meditation without deviation, that it doesn't stop meditating and seeing Krishna always within the mind. This is so many different goals of bhakti are given in the Bhagavad Gita and here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, taught by the different incarnations of Krishna and the different pure devotees that have come, the Shakti Vaishya avatars. Many different ways of worshiping Krishna, and the 9 processes of devotional service given by Maharaj Ambarish. There's so many different aspects, and but this keeping Krishna always in your mind. So when you're performing service, you're doing things during the day, you can always be reminded, I am doing it. What am I doing this for? I'm doing it for Krishna's pleasure. I'm doing it ultimately for, even if we're just a grihasta and have to work in the mundane world to earn a living, if we always are putting Krishna in our mind, always there, always that I'm doing this, I have a responsibility to my family, I am engaging them in Krishna's service, and I can engage what I can, the income, whatever service I can do. And so in this way, whatever you're doing, some mundane work, but you can transform that into devotional service by keeping Krishna always in the center, always in your mind, always with, what am I doing this for? I'm doing it to please Krishna. Ultimately, in a sense, it's for ourselves, because by satisfying Krishna, that is how we can attain happiness, like I said, because he's the origin of our own self. He is the origin of everything. By pleasing him, it is pleasing to everyone and ourselves. That is the goal. That is the understanding. So many people will try to please different demigods to get something for themselves. They'll approach Lord Shiva, Ganesh, and try to please them so they can get some personal benefit for themselves. And this puts them in somewhat contact with the culture. But it is everything, Krishna says, is ultimately awarded by him. The demigods do not give those benedictions, actually, from themselves. It is actually coming from Krishna, through the demigods. If you understand that Lord Shiva is the topmost devotee of Krishna, the demigods should be properly respected. And if you understand Lord Shiva is actually devotee of Krishna, topmost devotee, he's protector of the gopis in Vrindavan. He's he's also devotee. And you understanding it that way, you can still respect him and worship him if you have it properly. There was one Indian man, he had murti of Shiva in his house. And then he became devotee, and he kept the murti of Shiva in his house. So to some devotees who complaining to Prabhupada, he has Lord Shiva murti in his house. He's saying he's devotee, he's coming, but he's still worshipping Lord Shiva. So Prabhupada asked him, who do you see Lord Shiva? How do you see him? Oh, he's Krishna's greatest devotee. Prabhupada said, yes, you can continue worshiping. It was good. I have a little allergy, so I get running nose right now. So I guess I can ask some questions or comments, or what time does the class end? Huh? 10:30? Oh, 10 o'clock, okay. 30 minutes. Yeah, of course.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, as it was mentioned, the purport about chanting the names of pure devotees. So remembering Prabhupada always is same as remembering Krishna always. How can we understand?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
As it was mentioned in the purport, Prabhu, that chanting the names of the pure devotees. So is remembering Prabhupada always is same as remembering Krishna, and how can we cultivate that?
Yeah, I couldn't hear the last part. I didn't understand. I'm sorry. I have besides hard hearing, it's hard for me to understand accents.
To understand that chanting Prabhupada's name is equivalent to Krishna's name. How do we understand that?
We should understand that the pure devotee and the bona fide spiritual master is non-different from Krishna because he is preaching the same message. He's giving the same teachings. He's not deviating. He's a transparent via media. So he's not Krishna. We shouldn't understand that a pure devotee or the spiritual master is Krishna. But he is non-different in the sense that he is giving the same message. He's not deviating. He's not concocting something of his own. Prabhupada only repeated what Krishna is teaching. Every time Prabhupada gave class, He quoted so many different verses in Shastra. It wasn't just his idea or his concoction. He's simply presenting the scripture. But the devotee is like here it says, the pure devotees are connected in their pastimes with Krishna. Just like I said, Prabhupada promoted the Hare Krishna movement all over the world. And it became known as the Hare Krishna mission, the Hare Krishna movement. But you can say it's non-different from Prabhupada because, and he said, I am ISKCON. He's non-different from ISKCON because he has started it. What I mean is he's connected with it. Just like Prahlad is connected with the pastimes of Lord Nrsimha. Nrsimha only came to protect Prahlad. It was to protect his devotees. So he's intimately connected with Lord Nrsimha's appearance. So the revival of Krishna consciousness here in India, the spreading of Krishna consciousness all over the world is directly connected with Srila Prabhupada. So to glorify him is non-different from glorifying Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, you mentioned about meditating ourselves on Krishna's form. So many a times with the tribulations or whatever we are going through, the phase, we don't fix up our mind on Krishna. Be it in chanting or for that time being we do. But for 24 hours it is not possible for us. So
to what? Meditate on Krishna, you say?
yeah, to remember Krishna always.
Well, that's what Prabhupada was saying. If you come and you see the deities in the morning, take a mental photograph and make it an effort that now I've taken this mental photograph, keep bringing it up in your mind throughout the day. That's one process. Just whatever you're doing. For yourself, are you doing temple service or you have working outside? Huh?
Working outside.
Yeah, so like I said, you can, whatever you're doing, we need to put Krishna in the center of our lives. We need to establish that if we put Krishna in the center, then whatever we're doing, we dovetail that toward Krishna. So we have to work. If we have, money is the honey, Prabhupada said. You need you need income to survive in this world. So if you're grihastha, you have to do something, or you're living on your own, whatever. So you have to do something. If you have family, you have to support. So those things are needed. That's how society goes on. Most people are grihastas for in much of their life. So that goes on. But we have to then keep Krishna in the center. And that I am doing these things ultimately for Krishna.
Another question in that only, like whenever we are in problems or in a mental not state, what is the best way to get back to that consciousness?
Always praying. Whenever Kunti was in trouble, difficulty, she always prayed to Krishna. And in fact, that prayer, it was hard for me when I was a new devotee to wrap my mind around her prayer that she was praying to Krishna. Always keep the calamities coming, keep the miseries coming, because when things are going good, I forget you. But when there's difficult times, then I'm always, praying for your mercy. I'm always thinking of you. So keep the miseries coming so that I don't forget you. Who would pray like that? But not that we have to pray exactly. Well, actually, Prabhupada said we should look at the prayers of the great devotees. Arjuna, the prayers he gives Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Prahlad, who was praying to pacify Lord Nrsimha. We should look at Mother Kunti, the prayers of Mother Kunti. So we should look at the great devotees and study their prayers, and we should try to pray like that, so that we are put ourselves into that mood. And yeah, so whatever there's difficulties, that's when we should mostly remember Krishna and depend on his mercy. When the demons would come to Vrindavan, everybody had to run to Krishna, save them. That cowherd boy is they made a joke of walking into the what is the demon? Is it the big snake?
Aghasur.
Huh? Bakasur. Not Bakasur. Aghasur, yeah, Aghasur. Couldn't think. So they made a joke of it. Going into it's smelling, but they were making joke because they knew Krishna was going to protect them. We shouldn't actually do that. We shouldn't actually be so, what do you want to say? I mean, we can be confident in Krishna's protection, but we shouldn't take advantage. Shouldn't put ourselves in a dangerous situation just so that Krishna will protect us. That was Raghunath Das Goswami or Raghunath Bhatti was chanting japa in the sun, and I can't remember which Goswami corrected him, Rupa or Sanat, but he was saying, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Don't you know Radharani is having to stand above you to protect you? Why are you doing like this?" So we don't want to put ourselves into a dangerous situation on purpose. That Krishna has to protect us. But when we are, we have to reach out and think of Krishna. So anything, is that okay?
Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, who's speaking? Oh, okay.
Yes. So Prabhu, yesterday when you are taking association, so at that particular, when you are introducing yourself, at that time you said that first you were introduced to Islam. So even Prabhupada also mentioned in purport that Hazrat Muhammad was a pure devotee of the Lord. So when you were in Islam, or you are reading their books and all, so what difference you find from today's Islam and back there?
From Islam and what?
Modern form of Islam, and what you have established.
Oh, so let me clarify. I didn't like really take up Islam. I was just studying in the library. My journey was in the library. So I never actually went to a mosque or anything, or even knew anyone at those times. I was born Christian, and on my journey to understand who God really was, I started within the Christian teachings. And there was no description. I mean, I wanted to know what God really looks like and what he really does and and there was no description. And I was actually very depressed when I studied as a Christian, because that was always told as we were growing up, that this is the Word of God. This is God's book. This is the holy Word of God. And we didn't think, as Christians growing up, there is any other. This is it. So as I started reading and studying, because the Bible, I became more and more depressed because there isn't really anything about God. There is one God, the God of Israel, and everyone should, obey the God of Israel. That is basically their whole teaching. God is up there. He's the Father. But that actually Father concept mainly came from Lord Jesus. But there is God, the God of Israel, one God. But who is he? What does he look like? No description. What does he do? There's no description. So then I went to Judaism, because I was in the library studying religious section, and I would just bypass all the religions and go to Christianity. I had a friend at UCLA. I used to go to the UCLA research libraries just to study on my own, not as a student. I mean, not as a formal student, but just to go and study on the research libraries. But at the local library, I'd go and I'd bypass. And then I was thinking, I just need to, I can't find it in Christianity. And I was going by and I thought, wait a minute, there are other religions in the world, and they also worship God. So maybe what I'm looking for is in some other religion. So first I found Judaism. Jesus was a Jew, so maybe their scriptures. But then I found, it's the same scripture. It's the Old Testament of the Bible. And so but what I saw first in Judaism was that concept that one is too offensive. People, they consider everyone in this material world as too sinful to know the form of God. And I had to reject that because I felt on my mission that I was on, because as a Christian I tried to preach to someone. And when I told him that, I dedicated my life to preaching about God, and he said, why? Why are you doing that? I said, because if we preach about God in this life, we'll go to God's kingdom at the end of this life. And he said, well, I don't want to go to God. I don't want to go to heaven, because he thought he was Catholic. At least his family was Catholic. He went to Catholic church and said all they ever taught is God is this old man. He's the creator. And he's still living, so he must be really old. And they depict him as, all this wrinkled up and long gray hair and gray beard and, And he said, he doesn't know how to have fun. I want to party. I want to have fun. I want to listen to rock and roll music. I like fast cars and wine and women, He said, I said, well, that you can get this in this world. And he said, exactly. That's why I don't want to go to heaven. And I said, well, God isn't like that. He's not an old, boring old man. And then he said, no, what do you know? What do you know different? And I realized I didn't know anything. I just knew in my heart that's not who God is. So that took me on a journey to find out who God really is. And I couldn't find in the Christian scriptures. I couldn't find in Judaism. And then the next religion over in the library shelf was Islam. And actually what attracted me was a book that had color, sleeve on it. And it had photographs of the mosque, of temples, but mostly like here in India and, with the arches and all. And the first thing I thought about was genies and flying carpets. And I thought, wow, this is really mystic. I'll really find what I'm looking for here in Islam. Just the cover of that book and the, architecture just brought that to my mind. And I thought, this must be really mystical. And I was disappointed because it was the same thing. They taught the same thing as Judaism. Actually, Islam is born out of Judaism. It's another Judaic religion. It's born in the same, they teach right at the beginning, the same as the Old Testament of Genesis about Adam and Eve and Abraham and Cain and Abel. And this is where they have a little different twist to the history, but it's the same. It's based on Judaism. Why are they fighting? When really Judaism is the origin of Islam. Why are they fighting? Why are they at each other's throats? That's why Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is the only thing that will save actually the whole world. Because we're all equal. We're all Krishna's children, all of us. There is only one God. The Jews preach this. The Muslims preach this. But they say, it is a Muslim God. It is a Jewish God. There's only one God. And that's what I started looking at other religions because I had that kind of understanding. God is just one God, so they must be worshiping the same God. But again, I couldn't find what I was looking for. I didn't really practice Islam. I just looked at the books and studied that from that aspect.
So, Prabhu, another question is, yesterday you mentioned that Shulochan Das Prabhu was the one who circulated the July 9 letter to all the people. From there you got to know about July 9 letter. But it was written to all temple presidents, so it was it was never reached to all the temple president, or it was hidden by all the temple president. And in one of your video, Prabhu, you have mentioned you went to BBT archive and you had the handfuls of letters from Srila Prabhupada, but you are not able to get those letters. So any other letters other than July 9 letter would have been there? Is it like that, Prabhu?
Well, I'll just go back a little bit. When Prabhupada was present, devotees would get a letter. You know, I mean, if a devotee got a letter from Srila Prabhupada, everybody wanted to see the letter. Everybody would want to, know what Prabhupada had given. But, and when we talk about the BBT having Prabhupada's letters, Prabhupada's letters were just sent to individual persons. So right after Srila Prabhupada left, the BBT put out a request to all the devotees, please send in the original or copy of your letter from Srila Prabhupada so that the BBT can archive them. So all the letters the BBT now have, individual devotees just sent in their own copies, But when Prabhupada was here, there were letters that he wrote to GBC members. And I went, and those were instructions for how he wanted his mission managed. And so I went in Karunder was the GBC in Los Angeles at the time. So I was in Karunder's office and I noticed he had a stack of Prabhupada's letters. And it was a prestigious thing to get, to have some letters. I worked with the Fate Project. And so as Prabhupada would send letters to the Fate devotees, we collected those copies of those letters. So, we would have Prabhupada's instructions, what he said about our service that we're doing. And so anyone who had like at least 20 or 30 copies of Prabhupada's letters, it was like, wow, that was a prestige to have that many letters. But Karunder had quite a stack because he's GBC and these were letters for the GBC. The devotee who gave me in 1984 a stack of letters from Srila Prabhupada was a devotee who was archiving them in the BBT. That was his service. He was taking the letters and archiving them, categorizing them and things. So he made his own copies of the letters that Srila Prabhupada wrote to the GBC on how to manage. So I asked him for a copy, to make a copy. So he gave me that stack and I went and tried to make the copies at the BBT copier. And that's when I was told that Prabhupada's letters are, the GBC has decided to ban Srila Prabhupada's letters, the devotee access to the letters. And they didn't want us to know what Prabhupada had instructed the GBC because they knew they weren't following all of what he had instructed them and they felt that devotees would rebel against the GBC. That was their... But specifically about the July 9th letter, when Bhardraj, who was in charge of the diorama projects that I was working on, he was a senior devotee, and when he asked in 1978 to see that list, because we called it a list then, the list of the names of these 11 men, he asked to see it because we were told they were a list of gurus. And he wanted to see for himself that Prabhupada actually appointed people like Rameshwar and Tamal Krishna, which he felt were not really pure devotees. And I mean, we have to have our own, we have to make our own assessment, who we associate, who's an advanced devotee, who we should take association from. We have to make some assessment on our own. And we understood these people, with the way they dealt with their godbrothers privately, they were not pure devotees. We knew that. So we were confused. How would Prabhupada appoint such people? So he asked to see the letter and Rameshwar said no. It's for the GBC only. Because he told Bhardraj that it wasn't Prabhupada's full instruction. He gave the GBC verbal instruction. And this is only what he wrote in the letter would confuse devotees because they wouldn't know the full instruction. What my research was that the GBC were the ones who were confused because what they based their idea on, what they thought Prabhupada had said in the May 28th meeting, was not what he actually said. It was a flawed and misleading report that the GBC made of that meeting, and it was misleading. It said Prabhupada said things he didn't say. So that But yes, they banned that letter. We didn't have access to it. Are there other letters? Well, at that time, all the letters were banned. So up until the end of the Zonacharya system. And even then, it wasn't the GBC or the BBT who put out Prabhupada's letters. That book, 5 volumes of Prabhupada's letters, were put out by one of Prabhupada's disciples, who also got a copy of the microfilm, Nischintya, I think. And he published those books on his own. Then later, the BBT, made the Veda base and made the letters available. But never did the GBC actually present to the devotees the July 9th letter. And when I first got a copy, it was 1996, when I first read it. 19 years after Prabhupada wrote it. And it didn't come from the GBC, it came from, the devotees who were trying to tell us that Prabhupada didn't want these men to be gurus. He only... Imagine, this is the letter that Prabhupada gave the names that the GBC are telling us they're now the new acharyas in our line. They're now the new gurus, the successors of Srila Prabhupada. And in that very letter that he gave their names, he mentions nothing of them becoming guru, anytime. He just said, these are a list of Ritvik representatives of the acharya. And he gave their Ritvik duties. And that's all he said about it. He never said they're going to become actual gurus. Any other?
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, any particular pastime you like to share of Prabhupada, which you have personally saw or something?
I can just say that what impressed a lot of devotees was how Prabhupada just knew what we were thinking. And I mean, so many devotees had their own personal experience of these things. And my first experience of that was right after I got initiation. Before I was initiated, Kurandar, like I said, he was GBC there. He was telling us how nice it was to go on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. It was very intimate. It was just a few devotees, and Prabhupada was there, and he would be talking, and devotees could ask him questions, and it was very relaxed atmosphere, informal. So I asked him, after he said that, I said, can I go on a morning walk when Prabhupada comes? And he said, oh, you're not even initiated yet. I said, but you're going to be initiated. So he said, after you're initiated, I'll make arrangement. So I was initiated December 10th, and 1973, and then I think it was January 4th. It was the very first few days of January. He arranged I could go on a morning walk. So I would get to ask Prabhupada a question. I had been reading Prabhupada's books for 3 years before I joined the temple. I didn't really have any question. I accepted everything. I couldn't think of anything to ask him. So I sat down with Bhagavad Gita and I wrote down, oh, that would be a good question to ask. Oh, Prabhupada will think I'm so intelligent. Let me ask this. I was on the morning walk and I'm like, where's the list? Oh no, I forgot the list. Oh, Krishna's mercy, I forgot the list. I would have been a fool. But then I thought, well, now what am I going to ask Prabhupada? And I couldn't think of anything. And the only thing was that was in the news at the time was a new comet had been discovered by one Russian astronomer. So his last name was Kohotek, so it was called the Kohotek comet. And I thought, that's the only thing I could think of, to ask Prabhupada about a comet? What does that have to do with spiritual life? What kind of nonsense is he going to think I am to ask about a comet? And I thought, I can't ask that. And that was the only thing that kept coming up in my mind. The Kohotek comet. So I finally got up my nerve. I thought, well, I better ask him something. I'm on my morning walk and I don't want to pass up. I want to have a personal exchange with Prabhupada. I want to be able to ask him something just so he will even call me a nonsense. At least I'll have something, you know. I was just ready to ask. And the devotee right next to Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, there's this comet Kohotek. No, that's my question. So I'm like, you know, but he asked different than I would have asked. And he said, so Prabhupada, is a comet a bad omen? And Prabhupada said, no. He said, a bad omen, you can chant some mantra and counter it. But he said, when a comet passes through the solar system, it can disrupt slightly the orbits of the planets. And this causes mental agitation amongst the demigods and in the minds of men. So he said, when a comet comes through, it can create mental agitation. So if there is about to be a war, he said that World War I was because of the Halley comet came and caused so much agitation. There was already disturbance amongst the countries, and then when the comet came, he said it created mental agitation and everyone went to war. So he gave that as an example. He said, a bad omen you can counteract with some mantra. So that was a much more interesting question. But the point that I wanted to make was when Prabhupada, the devotee asked the question, Prabhupada saw who was asking. He looked over, he saw who was asking, and then he stopped. Prabhupada would come to a stop when he wanted to make a point. And then he first turned to that devotee and started answering, and then he turned totally around because I was behind Prabhupada. He turned totally around and he looked right at me and he started pointing at me, giving the rest of the answer. And that's when I understood. Prabhupada knew us. He knew what we were thinking. Krishna is in the heart. He's in our heart. He's in the heart of the pure devotee. Krishna reveals to the pure devotee, oh, this devotee was asking. You should turn around and answer to this devotee. And I'll just give one other example on that way, that I had a godbrother. It wasn't my direct with Prabhupada, but my godbrother, Chidananda, and he was having some difficulty and felt that he wasn't going to, we were brahmacharis, and he felt that it was somewhat austere and he just wasn't going to be able to remain in the ashram. He was thinking he may leave ISKCON and he didn't know what to do about it. So Prabhupada had come. And so he went up to Prabhupada's room. And normally nobody even thought of just going into Prabhupada's. In the early days, we heard in the 1960s, Prabhupada started, anyone could just go into Prabhupada's room. But by 73, when I joined, there was Prabhupada's secretaries and servants, and you had to go through them to go to Prabhupada's room. But he went over, and he saw no one was around. Prabhupada's door was open, so he just went into Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada's translating at his desk. And so he offered obeisances, and the devotee was telling me this right after he came out from Prabhupada's room. So he was just fresh on his mind. He was just telling me. He said he offered his obeisances, and he sat up, and he froze. He couldn't speak. Nothing would come out. He felt embarrassed to ask Prabhupada what to do. He felt he was leaving. He just felt too embarrassed to say that, and he just froze. He tried to speak, and it froze. So he said Prabhupada reached underneath, and he pulled out this little box underneath his desk, and this little box, about the size of a small matchbox. And he had it in his hand when the devotee was telling me, and he's showing me the box, and he said, Prabhupada said, open it. And he hadn't said a word to Srila Prabhupada. And he opened it, and there was these small, and the devotee was showing me, there was small deities of Radha Krishna. And beautiful Radha, they looked like gold with the velvet lining. And he said, when you're no longer in ISKCON, you must promise you will, everything you eat, you must offer to these deities first. Not eat anything without offering first to these deities. The devotee hadn't said anything. He didn't say he was having trouble, then he may leave ISKCON. But Prabhupada said, in the future, when you're no longer in ISKCON, when you're no longer at the temples, you must promise you will not eat anything till you offer to these deities first. That was probably 75 or 74 or 5. And when Prabhupada not left this world, but when he left Los Angeles at that time, that devotee left. I never saw him again after that. He left ISKCON. And so that was 75. So in 1990, 91 or so, I was distributing Prabhupada's books in the New Age magazines. That was before the internet, so I put ads in the New Age Journal in America, in these magazines, the Vegetarian Times, the Yoga Journal. So I put ads for Prabhupada's books and his lectures. And I got an order for Prabhupada's lectures from around the time that I was brahmachari and that time in Los Angeles. And the devotee gave me, the person making the order, it was a phone order, he called it in, and he was giving me his address and he gave me his name, Chidananda, that devotee. And I said, are you the Chidananda from Los Angeles, brahmachari? And he said, yes. And I said, do you still have the deities Prabhupada gave you? The phone went quiet. He didn't say anything. And then he said, how do you know about those deities? Because he forgot that he told me. He came, what it was is in the brahmachari ashram was upstairs. At that time there was about 60 to 80 brahmacharis, and we all had we were in 2 to 3 big rooms upstairs, all, sharing to sleep. So, because we were all gone during the day doing our services. Anyway, the washrooms are upstairs, so I had to use the washroom. That's why I was upstairs, right at the top of the stairs, and ready to come down. And he came out from Prabhupada's room, and he came running up those stairs, and then he told me the whole story about what happened. He said, you won't believe what just happened, and he told me the whole thing. So he forgot that he told me that. So I asked, and he said, yes, he still has those deities. And I said, are you still offering everything to those deities? Have you been offering everything to those deities? He said, Prabhu, I have not, since I left the temple, I have not eaten anything that I didn't offer to those deities first. But he was still saying, how do you know all this? He forgot he had told me, but that Prabhupada just knew us. He knew what we were, I wanted to ask that question. And he turned around and answered me. The devotee didn't say a word. Oh, when you're no longer in ISKCON, here, take these deities. So, but so many devotees have those stories, their own personal stories. It's just after 10. Okay, I think, unless there's something else. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories